6 passengers were enjoying a cruise aboard MSC Divina when a message suddenly came through the ship's public address system. The ship was supposedly adrift. The captain had supposedly lost control. For passengers hearing that announcement, this was not a joke. It was a possible emergency happening on a moving ship, surrounded by thousands of people who had no idea what was actually going on. But the most disturbing part is what happened next. The announcement was not made by the captain, the bridge, or the crew. It was allegedly broadcast by passengers who had gained unauthorized access to the ship's communication system. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. This was not simply a group of people making a bad joke in a cabin. It was an incident that created confusion across the ship, triggered an investigation, and raised serious questions about how much passengers trust the announcements they hear during an emergency. And it also shows how quickly one reckless decision can turn into a security incident affecting everyone on board. According to reports, the incident took place aboard MSC Divina during a sailing in the Mediterranean. The details are still developing, but investigators reportedly focused on 6 young men who were staying in 2 separate cabins. At some point during the voyage, a message was broadcast through the ship's public address system. The announcement reportedly suggested that the ship was adrift and that the captain had lost control. For someone sitting in a restaurant, walking through a corridor, or relaxing in a cabin, those words would immediately change the atmosphere. Passengers do not need to see smoke or feel the ship moving differently to become alarmed. They hear an announcement from a system they associate with the captain and the crew. They assume that the information has passed through the normal chain of command. That is what gives a ship-wide announcement its authority. The message does not need to sound dramatic. It does not need to include a siren. The fact that it comes through the ship's official communication system is enough to make people stop what they are doing and listen. And that is exactly why this incident became more serious than a normal prank. Cruise ships deal with bad behavior every day. Passengers argue. People drink too much. Someone ignores a balcony rule. Someone brings a prohibited item on board. Someone decides to film themselves doing something reckless for attention. Most of those incidents affect a limited number of people. A false emergency announcement is different. It uses the authority of the ship against the passengers. When someone broadcasts through an official communication channel, they are not merely saying something untrue. They are creating the impression that the cruise line itself is warning passengers about a dangerous situation. That can lead to several problems at the same time. Passengers may leave their cabins unnecessarily. People may rush toward elevators or stairways. Families may separate while trying to find one another. Older passengers or people with mobility limitations may attempt to move quickly when they should be waiting for verified instructions. Some guests may call relatives on shore and report that the ship is in trouble. Others may begin recording and sharing unconfirmed information online. The original message may last only a few seconds, but the confusion it creates can continue much longer. Now, here's another situation that catches a lot of people off guard. During a real emergency, the crew needs passengers to respond quickly to instructions. But they also need passengers to trust that the instructions are genuine. A fake announcement damages that trust. The reports surrounding this incident describe messages suggesting that the ship was adrift and that the captain no longer had control. Those claims would be frightening because they involve the 2 things passengers rely on most during a voyage: the ship's movement and the bridge's authority. Most passengers do not know how to evaluate a technical problem at sea. They cannot look out of a window and determine whether the ship is operating normally. They cannot tell whether a change in speed is part of a scheduled maneuver or a sign of a serious problem. They rely on the crew to explain what is happening. That is why a false message can create fear, even if the ship itself is operating normally. The passengers are not reacting to the physical condition of the ship. They are reacting to information that appears to come from an official source. In a situation like this, the first question is not simply, was the announcement true? The bigger question is, who had the ability to make passengers believe it was true? The ship's response was reportedly to inform passengers that the announcements were not legitimate. That clarification is important because the fastest way to stop a rumor is to replace it with verified information. The crew has to communicate three things. First, that the earlier message was false. Second, that the ship is operating normally, if that is the case. Third, that passengers should continue following official crew instructions. This sounds simple, but it is not always easy. When passengers hear two contradictory announcements, they may not know which one to believe. Some people will wait for confirmation. Some will call family members. Some will post online. Some will assume that the cruise line is hiding information. The crew therefore has to move quickly, but it also has to avoid creating additional confusion. That is why emergency communication systems are treated differently from ordinary entertainment or informational systems. A channel that can reach large numbers of passengers must be protected because a false message can affect crowd movement, safety decisions, and the ship's overall operation. Reports indicate that the incident was referred to authorities in Naples, Italy. The 6 passengers were reportedly facing charges related to the unauthorized access and false communications. The exact legal status of the case may change as investigators review what happened and how the system was accessed. That distinction matters. At this stage, the responsible way to describe the case is that the passengers are accused or alleged to have carried out the unauthorized broadcast. A charge is not the same as a final conviction. But even before a court reaches a final conclusion, a cruise line can still take immediate action. Cruise companies do not have to wait for a criminal trial before removing passengers from a ship, denying them future bookings, or cooperating with authorities. Their first responsibility is to protect the voyage and the people on board. If the cruise line believes a passenger created a serious safety or security risk, the consequences can begin immediately. That can include removal at the next port, cancellation of the remaining cruise, a permanent ban, financial liability, and possible criminal proceedings. This is the part many passengers misunderstand. A cruise ship is a holiday environment, but it is not a consequence-free environment. You are still on a vessel with restricted systems, controlled access areas, emergency procedures, and international legal responsibilities. The public reports raise an obvious question. How did passengers gain access to a system that was supposed to be restricted? That is now part of the investigation. But from a passenger safety perspective, the exact technical method is less important than the result. The result was that unauthorized people allegedly reached a system designed to carry trusted information. That tells you something important about modern cruise ships. A cruise ship is not just a hotel floating on water. It is a complex operating environment with navigation systems, security systems, internal communications, passenger records, entertainment networks, and emergency procedures. Many of these systems are connected in ways that passengers never see. That does not mean the ship is unsafe. It means the systems must be separated, monitored, and protected, because a failure in one area can create problems somewhere else. The average passenger does not need to know how the system is built, but the average passenger should understand that an announcement coming through a speaker is not automatically genuine simply because it sounds official. False emergency messages often create panic in 3 stages. The first stage is confusion. Passengers hear something unexpected and try to understand what it means. The second stage is belief. Because the message comes from what appears to be an official source, some passengers accept it before they receive confirmation. The third stage is reaction. People begin moving, calling, recording, posting, or looking for family members. The danger is not limited to the original lie. It is the chain reaction that follows. Imagine a passenger with a medical condition hearing that the ship has lost control. Imagine an older couple separated from the rest of their family. Imagine someone who has difficulty using stairs suddenly trying to move through a crowded corridor. Imagine hundreds of people heading toward the same elevators because they believe they need to reach a muster station immediately. During a real emergency, crowd movement is carefully managed. A false announcement can interrupt that management and create the exact kind of confusion the crew is trained to prevent. That is why this behavior is treated as a safety threat rather than simply bad humor. If you are on a cruise and hear an alarming announcement, there are 5 sensible steps. First, listen carefully to the complete message. Do not react to the first few words and immediately start running. Second, look for crew instructions. A genuine emergency will normally produce coordinated directions from crew members, emergency signage, or additional official announcements. Third, avoid spreading an unverified version of the story. Repeating a false claim can make the situation worse, especially when other passengers are already frightened. Fourth, stay with the people traveling with you unless crew members direct you to move. This is especially important for older passengers, children, and anyone who may need assistance. Fifth, follow the ship's instructions even if another passenger tells you something different. A fellow passenger may be confident and completely wrong. The crew is the source of direction. And if you believe you have heard a false or suspicious announcement, report it to a crew member rather than confronting the person you suspect. Do not try to investigate the system yourself. Do not enter restricted areas. Do not turn a security incident into a second security incident. This incident belongs to a larger pattern we see across cruise travel. Passengers often underestimate how seriously cruise lines treat behavior that interferes with safety systems. A person may believe they are creating a funny video. Another may think they are proving that a security rule is unnecessary. Someone else may assume that a cruise ship is a private resort where normal consequences do not apply. But cruise lines evaluate behavior based on risk. Was a restricted system accessed? Could the behavior cause passengers to move unexpectedly? Could it interfere with an emergency response? Could it create fear, injury, or operational disruption? Once the answer becomes yes, the situation changes. It is no longer about whether the person intended to hurt someone. It becomes about the risk they created. That is why seemingly different incidents, fighting, tampering with equipment, making false emergency claims, smoking where it is prohibited, or interfering with safety procedures can all lead to severe consequences. What changed was not the passenger's intention. What changed was the risk created for everyone else. The deepest lesson from the MSC Divina incident is not that passengers should be frightened of every announcement. It is that trust is part of a ship's safety system. Passengers trust the crew to communicate during an emergency. Crew members trust passengers to follow instructions. Families trust that official information is accurate. When someone allegedly misuses an official communication system, they damage all 3 layers of that relationship. That damage can continue even after the false message is corrected. Passengers may become slower to respond next time. They may assume that another message is also a prank. They may hesitate when immediate action is actually required. That is why cruise lines are so strict about conduct involving safety and communication systems. The rule is not designed to ruin the vacation. It exists because a ship-wide communication channel can influence thousands of people at once. For passengers, the practical lesson is straightforward. If an announcement sounds alarming, stay calm and wait for verified instructions. Do not spread rumors. Do not run toward a crowd unless crew members direct you. Stay aware of the people traveling with you. And remember that a cruise ship's communication system is not a toy, a stage, or a place to test a prank. For the passengers accused in this case, what may have seemed entertaining for a few moments reportedly created confusion across the ship and resulted in legal consequences. The investigation will determine exactly what happened, how access was obtained, and what charges ultimately apply. But the passenger lesson is already clear. A false announcement does not remain inside one cabin. It travels through the ship. It reaches people who never agreed to participate. And it can turn one person's moment of attention-seeking into a safety problem for everyone on board. Because the biggest difference between a smooth cruise and a stressful one is not luck. It is awareness. The goal is not to cruise in fear. The goal is to cruise smarter, stay ahead of changes, and make sure nothing ruins a trip you've been looking forward to for months or even years. This was not just a story about 6 passengers and one false announcement.